Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first electronic meeting of the Norfolk School Board. We'll go ahead and get started with the certification process. Every public body shall give notice of the time, date, and location of its meeting other than special, emergency, or continued meetings at least 3 working days in advance by placing such notice on its official government website, if any, placing such notice in prominent public location, which notices are regularly posted, and placing such notice at the office of the clerk of the body, or in the case of a public body that has no clerk, at the office of the chief administrator. Reasonable notice under the circumstances of special, emergency, or continued meetings shall be given contemporaneously with the notice provided to the members of the policy body conducting the meeting. Ms. Tanner, has today's meeting been properly certified?
Yes, Madam Chair, on March 18, 2020, notice was provided fulfilling all criteria VA Code Chapter 37.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Tanner. I duly call this meeting to order. We will now proceed with our roll call. Ms. Tanner, please call the roll.
Basine? Here. Campson?
Here.
Blanton?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
Martin?
Here.
Jordan?
Here.
Gabriel?
Here. Before we begin, I would like to ask the participants to just bear with our process here. This is our first meeting conducted in this manner, and I know that several of us went through some test runs. If something does come up, I'm going to ask for your flexibility so we can troubleshoot the issue. For those watching, I ask for your patience as well. Thank you very much, Mrs. Tanner and our communications department and IT department for all of your assistance in helping us come together and allow this business meeting to take place. We have two business items on today's agenda. Both items require a vote. And for the purposes of the minutes, I'd like to state the following items. Number 1, today's meeting is being held by electronic communication means pursuant to Section 2.2-3708, Code of Virginia's Freedom of Information Act. Number 2, the nature of emergency requiring holding this meeting by electronic communication is the worldwide coronavirus pandemic emergency and the resulting declaration of emergency by the President of the United States, the Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, the Mayor of the City of Norfolk, and the Norfolk City Council. And number 3, the type of electronic communication means utilized for this meeting is the video conferencing technology provided by the Zoom Corporation. Okay, let me just enlarge the screen. Okay, let's see here. Okay, Dr. Birdsong, thank you for all of the work that has been conducted by yourself and your leadership team, and especially the teachers and staff. Leadership is very critical during a time like this, and how you've to organize and assess the staff, as well as implement a plan for providing the nutritious meals and the educational learning materials, as well as keeping parents and community members informed, is very commendable. The work is just beginning, and I understand that. I give you my full support. As a united city with the mayor and the city council and our board and staff members, together we will chart a new way to educate and engage with our students and families. And for our families and staff, we are experiencing this together. As a mother of 4 and as a physician working on the front lines, I understand your concerns. I am resolved that our school division, we are strong, resilient, and committed to overcoming the coronavirus. Dr. Birdsong, before I begin the process for the resolutions, would you like to share a few words to our NPS staff, students, and families?
Please, thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Gabriel, Mr. Clanton, members of the school board, and our community stakeholders. What a difference a few weeks make. On March the 4th, we were focused on budget discussions relative to important financial decisions such as compensation for our valued employees and security staff for our elementary schools. We had no way of knowing that 13 days later, we would be dealing with the closure of Virginia schools because of a pandemic known as COVID-19. Suddenly, the long-range, big-picture importance of shaping a budget for the fiscal year was not what was immediately on our horizon. In what seemed like a moment, we were faced with how to provide educational services to almost 30,000 students, some of whom do not have access to the internet, and how to ensure that many of our children continue to be provided with healthy food throughout the day. I am extremely proud to share that I led a workforce that is innovative, adaptable, and absolutely, totally dedicated to the children of Norfolk Public Schools. I can't say enough about the responsiveness of the staff of the Department of Curriculum and Instruction, who worked tirelessly to develop the school division's learning and place plans, which are of real substance for our students. In my book, they are truly, truly rock stars. Then there were the building principals who were like generals of their schools, making sure everyone was in record time, manning their battle stations. The ingenuity of our teachers is beyond compare. They took the learning and place plans developed by the CNI team and made them their own. And they continue to stay connected with their students through email, Class Dojo, Google Classroom, and the good old-fashioned telephone. And I certainly would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the outstanding work of the school nutrition staff. They are truly our everyday heroes who make sure that our families who need food services are served and served with genuine compassion and care. They do so with a smile on their faces, and they don't ever, ever complain about supporting our children and community through this challenging time. And now we face a new challenge. 2 days ago, Governor Northam ordered the schools to close for the remainder of the academic year. I will admit the challenge is enormous, but this is a workforce that will not be phased. We won't be phased. I understand that our families have many questions at this time related to important issues such as graduations, the awarding of verified credits and standard credits, for example. Some of these decisions will be guided by the Virginia Department of Education. Other decisions will be made by local school administrations and school boards. I asked our families to be patient with us. There are many, many logistical issues involved with ensuring that continuity in learning takes place during a crisis of this magnitude. Ours are decisions that demand strategic and equitable thinking, and we will take some time. It will take some time, but it will not be an excessive amount of time. We will continue to communicate with you regarding important decisions as soon as we possibly can. Finally, this afternoon, we're here for another important purpose, and that is to renew our discussion regarding the budget for the next fiscal year with the goal of school board adoption. City Council is expecting to receive our expenditure plan by April 1st to begin its deliberations. Our $350.1 million operating budget is what will drive progress in our school division next year. While it has not had the urgency that our pandemic planning has had in recent weeks, we all know just how important it really is. Again, you have before you my proposed budget for the 2020-2021 school year, and I appreciate your efforts to work towards finalization. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so as I shared before, we have 2 items on today's agenda that will require a vote. And I've put together a process so that everyone can have the opportunity to speak. So please wait to be acknowledged before speaking. Once a motion is on the floor, each member wishing to speak will have 3 minutes. Once all members wishing to speak have spoken, if more time is needed, 2-minute response will be offered. And when the clerk calls for your vote, only answer with a yay or a nay, no additional comment, please. So the resolution, item 1.04, resolution on the pandemic emergency. Is there a motion on the floor for this proposed resolution?
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the resolution of the school board of the city of Norfolk, a resolution regarding temporary changes in certain deadlines and to modify public meeting and public hearing practices and procedures to address continuity of operations associated with the pandemic disaster.
I second the motion.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Clinton. And Ms. Campson, state that again.
I second the motion.
Okay, Ms. Campson has seconded the motion. Is there further discussion?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Jordan, please go ahead and start us off.
Can we have Attorney Cloud just walk us through the motion and its meaning and impact?
Absolutely. Mr. Cloud, would you mind walking us through this resolution and sharing why it is important for the board to take action on it today?
Sure. It's intended generally just to state to the public the board's process in the ongoing weeks as the emergency continues and may or may not get worse. Section 1 has to do with a general statement that that matters before the board are considered continued unless the board actually acts on them. And that would include matters that the failure to act might be otherwise treated by statute as an approval or affirmation. The idea behind that is that because depending on how the current situation changes and what other orders the governor may issue, that there may be matters currently that are before the board or will come before the board during the emergency that the board will not be able to act upon because it cannot produce a quorum of, in your case, 4 members in one place. And so it's treating those as continued, including any matters that might otherwise be treated as the board having acted by doing nothing. I can't think of a statute directly related to school boards, but to give you an example from other contexts, community service boards have to enter into contracts with the state every year, and those contracts have to be approved by the local city council. And there's a statute that says if the council doesn't approve it by a certain date, I think it's something like September 1st, then the contract is considered approved. It's to stave off those possible statutes that might cause the board's inaction to be treated as approval. That's the purpose of this first paragraph. The second paragraph is essentially just repeating what the law is with regard to meetings by, as the statute says, electronic communication means. In other words, meetings that are held without a quorum of the board being in any one physical place. The need for that is obvious. Currently, to have 4 members of the board together in one place would actually probably require, 10 or 12 people to be together because of the need for technological assistance, the clerk, me, other members. But that says nothing more than what the Virginia Code already says. And of course, for any given meeting that we plan in the future to do by electronic communication means, in each one has to be decided on a case-by-case basis by the board with the advice of counsel. And in saying that, that is almost a direct quote from the state attorney general's opinion that was issued within the past couple of days. Section 3 is meant to address situations where public hearings might be necessary and to provide the possibility of public comment to be done electronically. Section 4 is it just encouraging. It doesn't require citizens, to the extent that there may be in the pending weeks and months situations where we do hold regular meetings, perhaps not with all the board there, but with a quorum, that citizens continue consider even then to email their public comments in lieu of actually attending the board meeting. for those meetings that are actually held with a quorum being present in one place. And then finally, Section 5 indicates that the resolution will be in effect from and after its adoption during the various declarations of emergency that have been made or any that may be made in the future are for 6 months. The 6 months provision is taken by analogy from a Virginia Code statute that actually applies to local government, not school boards. It's meant to be simply an outside limit. However, it's worth pointing out to the board and the public that, of course, the resolution could be revised, amended, or repealed at any given time in the coming weeks as situations change, as the virus, as the pandemic increases or lessens, and as the governor may issue further executive orders on top of the 3 he has already issued, beginning on, I think it was March 12th. And I'm happy to answer specific questions about any of it.
Okay. All right.
Madam Chair.
All right. Ms. Basine, I see you have raised your hand.
Madam Chair, is
Yeah.
making the motion.
What?
Oh, hold on one second first. Hold on a second, Ms. Basine. Mr. Clanton?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, this is directed to Mr. Cloud. The resolution is in response to the opinion that was issued back from the Attorney General in response to the letter that he had received from, I think, a couple state delegates regarding the operations of local government, correct?
I took the Attorney General's opinion into consideration in drafting the resolution, yes.
All right, thank you. Ms. Basine.
Ms. Basine.
Okay. So in the first section, so I'm a little confused, and it may be my interpretation of the Attorney General's opinion, but I thought that the meetings had to be limited to the emergency or anything that is impacted by the emergency.
Well, the first section is not addressing meetings at all. It's addressing matters that may be coming up in the future and saying that they are continued.
Right, but if it is not directly related to the emergency or areas that are impacted directly by the emergency, can you maybe you just need to restate, like if it's a matter like the budget, for instance. I know there are some questions, well, at least I had a question about how the budget, if the budget is an item that can be discussed through these means.
The budget is required to be passed by April 1st.
Right.
And so my interpretation of the FOIA would mean that it needs to be passed by April 1st, and therefore that would justify it coming under the exception for these meetings by electronic communication means, because otherwise you will have violated the statute.
Okay.
So unless 4 of you are able to come together and come to the school administration for a meeting at which the 3 others could then call in pursuant to the other provisions within FOIA that allow that sort of meeting.
Okay. And then in regard to the public comments, so the public comments, there isn't a requirement that they also be made public according to FOIA, or what do you know, or what is your
provision for
understanding?
electronic, I'm sorry.
So what is your understanding of that?
My understanding is that the statute requires in a meeting that is held entirely by electronic communication means that the public have access to the meeting. And I think what we're doing provides that.
Okay, but the public comments that we're asking, as stated in this resolution, is that they be submitted to the school board clerk. whereas normally, they're publicly stated,
That's correct.
in a meeting. So we don't have any requirement to make them public in this format?
You mean make the comments of individuals available to all members of the public?
Yes.
I don't think there's a requirement to that, but I would say there is no harm in it. And if it's technologically possible, I would say do it. That the clerk could take, I'm assuming those are being received by email, that those could then be posted so all members of the public can see the comments of any individuals.
Okay.
And we can also attach those comments to the minutes as well. We can attach them early on so members of the public can see them, and then we can also attach them to the minutes.
Okay.
I mean, I would suggest just putting them in board docs with the agenda and everything as a part of the whole package. Minutes is a totally different thing. It's your official record. And if they weren't participating in the meeting, I would have an issue with that.
Okay. All right. I'm looking to see if anybody else has any other comments. Okay. Hold on. Ms. Campson?
Why don't we just, when we put the emails that we've been getting, and thank you, Ms. Tanner, for getting those to us so quickly. I was spending the day trying to get a response back to each one. I hope I got most of them. Some of them had to do with the budget, but almost all of them had to do with other things. So do we attach just the ones that address the budget, since that's the only item that we're allowed to discuss today because of the need to get the budget sent to the city? Or do we just post all of them even if they regard other things? I mean, I don't care either way, but I just wondered how that goes. Do we just post what's on the agenda?
I don't think there'd be any legal issue with posting them all.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Just wondering.
I would say that emails that are in reference to the budget are attached to this discussion. If they are emails that are outside of the budget, then they are outside of the budget, and they don't necessarily become attached to this meeting of record.
Well, and I would just to clarify when I said about posting them, I see no harm in posting them. However, they are not things that you can currently discuss as part of this special meeting that's being held by electronic means. Those are limited to what you've advertised, the resolution and the budget.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Jordan, I saw your hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to, Attorney Cloud, if you can help explain. So under normal circumstances where we have a work session and a business meeting, and we're gathered together with appropriate number of members present for to constitute a quorum, we conduct our business the way we do. This resolution, I think I have a better understanding of what it allows for this particular meeting, but can you explain how this resolution impacts our, I'll just say, our regular operations if we try to conduct business electronically? So for example, we know during our business meetings, we often will start off with a closed session and deal with personnel matters or student support matters. We then come out into a public meeting and take action accordingly. Does this resolution have any impact on that process, or what would be the process for us going forward in trying to handle that type of business?
Well, for closed sessions, they would, whether electronic or not, you would do in the usual fashion. There'd have to be a motion, and of course, it would have to meet the legal requirements, et cetera. Then the session itself is, of course, closed to the public anyway. And then coming out again, you would have to publicly certify. Now, what you can address in any future meetings that are done by electronic means, absent some further emergency orders we may see in the future, will be governed by those provisions, either of the governor's order and or the FOIA, which the essential provision in the FOIA is that the purpose of the meeting is to address the emergency. And I think that in your context, then we would be talking about things that one way or the other have to be done as part of the process of addressing the emergency. Certain things you all have to do that are unique to school boards, such as personnel matters. I think that they could be addressed through such meetings by electronic means. And in those meetings, you may well want to have an executive session, which would be entered into in the usual fashion. And I don't know how, technologically there would have to be some way to then during the session to eliminate access by the public. And in general, with regard to whatever you plan to do in the future, to the extent you're going to do it in this fashion, all those have to be addressed on a case-by-case basis, with the advice of your counsel, which is essentially what the AG said.
Okay.
Right. So outside of the budget, which we're dealing with today because of the requirement to submit a budget to the local governing body by April 1st, what other examples do we have, or that you are aware of, or maybe anybody else on the meeting is aware of, that requires us to take action so that we have the resolution on the way to deal with things over a 6-month period versus having the resolution deal with this specific meeting and the budget?
The resolution, you could pass a new resolution with each meeting if you want. Regardless of whether you have a resolution or not, you would still have to address for each such meeting the questions related to the ability to do so under 2.2-3708.2. The kind of matters that I'm thinking of are things that simply cannot wait because only the school board can do them. Right. Only school boards can hire, terminate, take other types of actions in the personnel realm, except for the only thing that I can remember off the top of my head that the General Assembly has authorized you to delegate to the superintendent, and the school board has so delegated it, is that superintendent by board policy has been given the authority to transfer people amongst positions so long as their salaries are not changed. But in general, that's the only thing I can think of where the superintendent has actually been delegated authority to take personnel action. Now, student matters, I don't know that, we'll have to see what comes up and when, but off the top of my head, I think that probably most of those can be postponed. I'm thinking of the typical student disciplinary agenda, docket matter that you have. And beyond that, I think, I guess, once your budget goes to the council will act, and then potentially, it will be returned to you all. And again, you may be facing further action with a deadline that in those circumstances, again, I would say it would meet the requirements for a meeting held by purely electronic means.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Clanton.
So I pose this back to Mr. Jordan because I went here to look because it was interesting what you were asking about other situations. You don't like to have it brought up a lot of times, but you are the VSBA president, and the VSBA attorney, Ms. Elizabeth Ewing, on the 17th issued an opinion out from VSBA to all of the School Board Association members. And one of those things was about electronic meetings. fully in this capacity and being able to conduct our items here and conduct business. So I'm gonna pose it back to you. Do you have any other situations or guidance that you may have heard from across the state that could be helpful to us in the situation?
Well, to your question, there have been a lot of inquiries from school boards across the division, across the Commonwealth, and which was one of the reasons, my understanding, that the VSBA provided that guidance to local school boards so that each school board would be able to consult with their attorney in order to take action based upon their process. I want to make sure that I'm clear. What I'm trying to get clarity around is how we do business under the environment that we currently exist under the state of emergency, and how the resolution impacts that. So where I was going to comment a moment ago was, before your question, was, does it make more sense for us to have this resolution apply to this meeting and the budget, and then have a separate resolution as needed for additional action that we are taking? And the reason I say that is, if today we know, if the advice we're getting today is because the budget requires specific action, and per the Attorney General's recommendation and Attorney Cloud's recommendation, this falls within that category. I was asking because I was trying to figure out if there's anything else that we knew of that would fall for us as a school board, unlike what Attorney Cloud was describing may be the scenario for the Community Services Board. So if there was nothing else that we knew of, I was just going to suggest that we would consider amending the resolution to have it be specific to this meeting and the budget. And then as we decide what our processes are going to be moving forward to deal with the regular operations of as far as where the school board is concerned, we would come back with a resolution specific to that.
So, Madam Chair, to Mr. Jordan's response there, I don't think today we'll be done with the budget. And I know that some of you have been a lot longer, but we're going to send this budget over to council for their review by April 1st, and awaiting any response if there's any changes from the budget. And then this board would have to discuss those. And I know we had a situation, maybe it was last year, where we had to make some adjustments and amounts, and where we need to make some cuts. So I would not be in support of limiting it to today, because I don't think that we're done with the budget until we actually are done with the budget. And when we actually hear something back from council as to, we've received some guidance in regards to, funding sources and so forth here. So I don't think that we're just dealing with the budget today. I like the aspect of being able, we know that at least to June 30th, we'll be dealing with the budget.
Right.
And Mr. Clanton, I hear you. I was just thinking that there are two separate actions, that this resolution.
Separate the regular business from the budget item.
No, I'm saying this resolution, as it relates to the budget, speaks to the requirement of school boards to submit to the local governing body a budget proposal by April 1st. Then after the local government takes action and goes through all of its public hearing and processes and makes a determination of what it wants to allocate back to the school board, then the school board has a requirement then to pass a budget by a certain date. And so to me, those are two separate, they both involve the budget, but two separate items that are governing what we're required to do.
Okay. Does anybody else have any additional comments? I'm scrolling through here. No? Okay. Ms. Tanner, can you please call the roll?
Basine?
Aye.
Campson?
Aye.
Clanton?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye.
Gordon?
Nay.
Gabriel?
Okay. The motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, next item on the agenda is the resolution of the superintendent's proposed budget for the fiscal year 2020 to 2021. I'll just open this by stating that the board began this budget process early in November, and we've had many meetings. We've had 2 public hearings. We have received comments through email, telephone call, and in person from various stakeholders. We thank all of the stakeholders for the feedback that we've received. Dr. Birdsong and her team have prepared a proposed budget that we must approve and share with the city by April 1st, as been previously mentioned. Is there a motion on the floor to approve the proposed budget?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the superintendent's proposed budget.
Just a second, Carlos.
Hold on one second. Hold on.
So just a quick question.
We approve the proposed budget for the fiscal year 2021.
Okay. Hold on. Ms. Smith, did you have a question? Are you experiencing a technical difficulty?
No, I'd like to, do we have to wait for it to be approved to hold discussion? I'd like to have discussion.
No,
this is a formal meeting. He's putting the motion on the floor, and we're going to have a second, and then we'll have discussion.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
Okay. Okay, so Mr. Clanton has proposed a motion. Do you mind just repeating that, because there were some interruptions?
No, not a problem.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, I move that we approve the superintendent's proposed budget for fiscal year 2020-2021.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Martin. Ms. Martin seconds the motion. Okay, I'm going to call on a member who has their hand up for comment. Ms. Smith.
So during the 2 presentations that we had, the one at Granby High School and then the one following that a couple of weeks ago, we were not afforded ample opportunity to have an open discussion about the budget and concerns that we have. So there are 2 areas of concern that I have that I'd like taken into consideration. I'd like to propose for approval, a part of the approval, and that's adding a curriculum specialist to the STEM Academy, where they will have one for the lower grades as well as one to help develop the curriculum for the higher grades, and then to have a grant writer for us to begin to obtain and secure grants on behalf of the school board. So, and the grant writer position is something that we had discussed last year, and we keep pushing that back further.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Smith. Other comments on the budget?
Yes.
Okay, hold on. I heard somebody say, okay, Tanya, Ms. Basine.
I agree, what Ms. Smith said, and as I shared at the last meeting, or attempted to share, we did not, as she said, have ample time to discuss the budget and all the questions that have been raised, as well as some suggestions for other resources in lieu of school security resource officers, for instance. I had submitted questions on March 3rd and on March 10th again with some unanswered questions that I was hoping that we could have discussion about those. Some of my comments were related to adding school counselors and school psychologists beyond what the SOQs were allowing. To go beyond that, as we heard at the last meeting, anecdotally, we have people on the front lines who do wear many hats, and the mental and behavioral health of our students is a concern for many, and I think we need greater supports in that area. through school counselors, as school social workers, and school psychologists. So I would like to see greater emphasis and support being placed there. There are questions raised about targeted increases for teachers and other teaching positions. And I would like, continued, this is a continuation of questions that we've raised already, but some clarifications there as to what can be done, and if there's any analysis that can be looked at to more specifically target increases to particular teachers and teacher groups and staff categories that may need to be examined. And so, I right now, as I've stated before, cannot support this budget without having the data to inform the decisions being made here. So, I would like greater clarity there.
Okay, thank you very much. Others wishing to speak on the motion on the floor for the budget?
Dr. Gabriel.
Let's see.
Dr. Gabriel.
Is that, yes, Mr. Jordan.
I just have a point of information for right now. We didn't start with a presentation by Dr. Birdsong. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. The motion made and seconded that
Mr. Jordan, you're breaking up.
Yeah, Mr. Jordan is breaking up.
To approve the.
I can't hear Mr. Jordan.
Let me see if.
Mr. Jordan, could you talk louder? I'm sorry for interrupting, but I can't hear what Mr. Jordan's saying.
Okay, hold on a second, everybody. Let me conversation to Ms. Tanner, because I think we're all hearing the same issues with Mr. Jordan's audio. Mr. Jordan, can you restate what you said, because we're having issues hearing you?
Yeah, one, I was going to say, let me reset my connection to see if that will help.
Okay.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Mm-hmm. We can. I can. Yes. Can everybody give a thumbs up if you can hear Mr. Jordan?
Okay. Okay. So I had a point of information that I was wanting to get some clarity on. The motion that we currently are discussing, is that the motion from February 19th, or is that the any adjustments that have been made based upon the items that one of the items we have under the content area is adjustments due to the General Assembly's amendments. Give the superintendent opportunity to present. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. Are we dealing with February 19th, or have there been other adjustments in the superintendent's proposal since that time?
Okay. So what we have prepared on board docs, and I'm going to let Dr. Birdsong speak to this. What we have on board docs is what we are voting on. Dr. Birdsong?
Yes, thank you for that point of clarification. As you know, or you may not know, the General Assembly approved a 1.9 increase, and within the budget, I wanted to demonstrate to you what we were going to do with that, or what we propose to do with that increase, which is extremely conservative. So I've asked if you want to refer to the PowerPoint presentation. Much of this is not new information, but I do want to give our budget director an opportunity to clarify how we plan, or how we propose to use that additional 1.9 from the General Assembly. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Tao so that she can provide that information to you. Thank you.
Ms. Tao, please proceed.
Yes, thank you. Karen, you want to pull up the presentation? Yes, just 1 second. Okay. We're pulling it up. Okay, which slide? No, it's the other one, the one that says March 25th.
Adjustments to superintendent's proposed operating budget.
Are we going to share this one? Just one minute. It's not, okay. It came up. Adjustments. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Yeah, that's the one. Okay. Good afternoon, Dr. Gabriel, Mr. Clanton, Dr. Birdsong, and members of the school board. The superintendent's proposed budget for 2021 was based on the governor's introduced budget. Today, I will share with you the changes to the superintendent's proposed budget based on the amendments adopted by the General Assembly. Dr. Birdsong shared with you her proposed budget on February 19th and March 4th. Since that time, the General Assembly has adopted a budget that increases our projected state revenue by 1.9 million compared to what we were going to receive under the governor's budget. This slide details the areas where the state funding baseline has changed from the governor's introduced to what the General Assembly adopted. SOP programs. There's no change between what the governor introduced and what the General Assembly adopted. Under the incentive programs, the General Assembly approved to provide a 2% salary increase effective 2021. That's an increase of 2.5 million. The General Assembly also eliminated the game of skills, which is a reduction of 1.4 million, and then there was a slight reduction in VPI funding. This gives a total net increase in incentive programs of 900,000. The next one is the categorical programs, no change. Norfolk Public Schools received $28,000 to provide homebound services to our special education students. The last one is the lottery-funded program. The General Assembly changed the supplemental lottery per pupil amount to what we now call the infrastructure and operations per pupil fund. This revenue right here allows us to spend 70% of that money on recurring costs and the 30% on non-recurring costs. Under this revenue, Norfolk Public Schools is projected to receive an increase of $1 million based on the state share of $375.27 per pupil. So overall, the net increase in the state revenue between what the governor introduced and what the General Assembly adopted is 1.9 million. Next. Oh,
Karen,
I didn't.
Which slide is she on?
it's really fast.
Okay, next slide, please. I'll let you know when to move the slide.
Perfect.
This slide shows the total expected increase in revenue for 2021 budget is 40 billion or 4.2% over this year. That's a total budget of 336.2 million to 350.2 million. State revenue is projected to increase by 11 million or 5.6% over the current fiscal year. This is by far the biggest increase in state funding that I have ever seen. Anyway, with regards to the city funding, 2021 marks the second year of the revenue sharing agreement between the city and the schools. The projected increase for 2021 is 3 million, which marks a 2.3% gain over the current year. Now, for the federal and other revenues, we are projecting that they will remain the same in 2021. Next slide, please. As presented in past meetings, Dr. Birdsong built her 2021 budget around 4 priorities: compensation, more resources for schools, safety and security, and building maintenance. This slide serves as a reminder of the programmatic plans for the next fiscal year. Next slide, please. In my earlier slide, I shared that Norfolk Public Schools is expected to receive an additional 1.9 million based on the amendments adopted by the General Assembly. In Dr. Birdsong's superintendent's proposed budget, she was able to introduce new initiatives because we moved 4.5 million of projected savings from rebasing of salaries and nutrition to address these initiatives. We are now recommending that the estimated savings of 4.5 million be reduced to 2.6 or by 1.9 million. That's from the additional state money, given the uncertainty and economic impact that COVID-19 will have on our financial future. Next slide, please. State code requires that Norfolk Public Schools must submit to City Council a budget by April 1st. So today, I would like to request that the school board adopt the following budgets for 2021, which together total 429.4 million for all funds. The breakdown is as follows. Operating fund, 350.2 million. Again, that is based on the amendments adopted by the General Assembly. School nutrition, 200.2 million. Grants, 42 million. CIP, 17.1 million. Again, the total amount for all funds that we are asking the school board to adopt is 429,437,885. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Tao. Dr. Birdsong. Ms.
I have a
Tanner,
question.
is there, hold on one second. Tanner, is there a way to come back off of the screen with the presentation so that I can see all of the members again?
Yes, we're ready to switch it now.
Okay. That's better. Okay. All right. Ms. Smith.
So I don't understand, comparatively speaking, how the 1.9 is going to be utilized in our budget. What are we doing different from the initial presentation, or in addition to the initial presentation that we received with this 1.9 million? I'm having difficulty following that.
Okay. Dr. Birdsong.
Yes, so basically, as a result of us getting this additional money, we want to be, or funding, we want to be extremely conservative because we don't know with tax revenues from the city what that's going to look like next year. So instead of dedicating this additional funding to additional positions or initiatives, the safest thing to do would be to apply it towards rebasing our salaries and benefits as well as our attrition savings.
Okay.
So that's the strategy we'd like to employ.
Thank you.
Okay.
Other comments or questions? And I cannot see Ms. Basine. Nope. Okay, I see. All right. Any comments? Any other comments or questions? Ms. Martin.
I just want to respond to Ms. Smith's comment about a grant writer, and just remind everyone we did just have a discussion where we were, we have this clerk. We had a discussion on, do we combine the grant writer responsibilities with the clerk position? And I think at the time, I think we ended up saying no, but then we didn't go forward with the grant writer, if I'm remembering correctly. So I think that, maybe that could be a topic in the future, because we still have that clerk position that is that's out there. And I haven't heard anything, so I'm assuming we haven't gotten any applications, or reasonable applications on that. So just wanted to put that out there.
And if I recall correctly, I think it was posted. But however, I do think that having a grants writer is a wonderful idea, just based upon the number of positions that we have. And in order to, and of course, I've talked to my budget director, and she's assured me that, of course, based on the information that we have now, we don't have any concerns about the budget. But it would be nice to have a person on staff who is dedicated to nothing but writing grants.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I would just add also that the position of the grant writer has been a very long discussion. I'm not sure, Dr. Birdsong, if you can recall, or even Ms. Tanner, in some of the very first board meetings that we had almost 7 years ago, we were talking about having a dedicated grant writer at full time. So again, I leave it to Dr. Birdsong if that is a recommendation that you can encompass within the budget, then we can have that further discussion at that point. Mr. Jordan, then Mr. Clayton, then Ms. Basine. I can't hear you, Rodney. Unmute.
Sorry. I have 4 amendments I'd like for the board to consider.
4 amendments to the proposed motion.
To the motion. Yes.
Okay, you want to start with your first
point of order? And I was being generous in there, but I haven't had an opportunity to enter discussion before another member. Mr. Jordan's already spoken.
Okay, Mr. Clanton.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you. I just wanted to say that I also agreed with Ms. Smith around the grant writer, and if Dr. Birdsong can find it within the structure that we already have to be able to fund that particular position, I will be in full support of that. I also, when we look at the other items that Ms. Basine brought up, and Mr. Jordan is now talking about 4 amendments, I'd just like to point out that we are all, and I think we're all aware because we're all on this Zoom, that we're dealing with an unprecedented time. And we've got jobs and things that we have to do. And particularly with this budget, I know that, there could always be more discussion, more time. We could continue to talk about things, but there has to be action at some particular point. And that's why we're having this meeting today, and that we have an April 1st deadline that we've got to meet. And so I know I've heard Mr. Jordan, I haven't heard amendments, but I just caution when I do hear amendments that we have to turn this thing in 6 days. Our administration building is closed for all accounts, and staff are scattered all over the place. So we also have to send a balanced budget, but I also understand when we look at this $1.9 million, we also have to look at the fact of what's going on in our city right now. MEAC was canceled. Right now, hotels aren't being filled. Restaurants are closed. Sales tax is not coming in, which brings caution for me that we send over a balanced budget to City Council, but we don't know what that budget's going to look like when it comes back to us. And so before making any alterations to a budget, I would really ask my colleagues to consider the time when we come back in either April or May to look at, after what City Council has based out to us as to what they can afford, then we begin to look at the budget and be able to look at an opportunity there to make amendments and changes, because that's what we're going to have to do, whether or not we're going to have to make cuts or we're going to have to add additional money. So that's just my opinion on that one. I appreciate the budget, but just so that we can take action and just be reasonable about thinking about amendments and changes, considering that we don't know what the future has in store for us, even 60 days from now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clanton. Mr. Jordan?
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Clanton's points about the uncertainty of the times. I don't know of any other process right now to have items considered other than the put forward amendments. I think that's the process. If it's not support for the amendments, I understand, the board can vote those amendment recommendations down. I just think that if we're going to send this over to the council for consideration, that this would be the time for us to do that. And as much as I can, I'm trying to make recommendations that would not cause significant major adjustments to the budget, although I acknowledge that would be a part of the process.
Okay.
So
Let's
the
just take
first
one amendment at a time.
Okay. So first, I like to, going back to the topic of the grant writer, I like to make the motion that we do include the position of a grant writer in the proposed budget. I think that in light of what may be occurring with the federal government's stimulus that may flow into the state stimulus, I think having that grant writer position in place and budgeted now, at least be included in the budget, is an important position, as has been stated earlier. So I think it should be included in the budget. If for some reason we come back later and still prioritize it, then so be it. But I think we're going to need somebody to help support different opportunities that may flow to us as a result of the stimulus. So my first motion is to have the grant writer position included in the proposed budget.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion?
I second that motion.
Okay, Ms. Basine, it makes a second to the motion. Is there a discussion on the amendment to the motion? Mr. Clanton?
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I will go forward and support this particular amendment because of the simple fact that the superintendent has said that essentially it could potentially be budget neutral. It won't make any significant changes, and we could find it within potentially the funds that we already have there. It is something that's needed, and we've talked about it for a while. So I will support this particular amendment.
Okay. Dr. Birdsong, do you mind speaking to this? Would this be budget neutral?
Well, certainly any position that we add, it won't necessarily be budget neutral, but we're in the process of reviewing positions at this time. I'm working with my budget director to do that. And I do believe that perhaps some positions that haven't been filled in quite some time and those that could possibly be eliminated, we could certainly include it in the budget. And I'd also like to state too, in speaking with our academicians relative to the STEM Academy, I think Ms. Smith makes a very good point about adding a second position for the STEM Academy. That program needs a lot of support, and certainly having someone to focus on the elementary piece and another individual to focus on the secondary piece would be quite beneficial. So I would definitely support that, and whatever position I needed to eliminate, of course, being very thoughtful about that, I would certainly want to support that.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Campson.
I also support the position that Ms. Smith is, I'm not quite sure what it's called, curriculum specialist, but I assume my only, and I would certainly be very much in favor of that. What I know, I remember that I'd asked for an additional instructional specialist go there, and I think it might be, and I'd like to ask Ms. Smith if it's the same thing. It would be a fully certified and experienced STEM teacher, that we would not be putting anyone in the STEM Academy that's called a specialist in anything unless they are actually a specialist in STEM. That seems to be one of the problems that we have there. We do not have enough people that are certified and trained and experienced and planning and delivering STEM lessons. So I would certainly support it based on the fact that when we do the job description, it's very clear that we expect people that are certified in STEM. Doesn't mean we can't do some internal promotions if we're going to spend, well, if we had a summer training them, but let's please not hire anyone else in there as a specialist unless they have STEM certification. As to the grant writer, everyone knows that last year, I haven't had to do it so far this year. My feelings about continuing to add additional positions to central office until we have everything else fully staffed. But if we're leaving the positions in and reading and math specialists, if they're staying in all of our schools, all of our elementary schools, then I would, without any cuts to them, then I guess I could go with the grant writer. We had them in the past. Basically, they just gave you a grant and you wrote it yourself. So I wasn't quite sure how well, yeah. I mean, the maritime one that we did, I mean, I wrote that with the Northside and the Granby people. All they did was pass it to us and we did it ourselves. But as long as we're sure that we're not expecting everyone to do it, it doesn't work that way in the future. So I'm not really spot on that one. Certainly, I'm with Ms. Smith on the additional staffing at STEM Academy.
Okay.
And to be clear, we are first looking at central office positions. I will not be taking away support from buildings.
All right, that's my thing, because that's what kept happening before. And so our buildings are still not completely staffed to the extent they need to be to give the children the academic support that they need.
Ms. Tao and I have already had that conversation about where the priorities would be.
Yeah, I know, and I've seen that in your budget. Thank you very much, Dr. Tom.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Again, this discussion is related to the amendment to the motion on the floor. Ms. Basine?
Well, I just want to be sure we're talking about the amendment for the grant writer.
That's right. We're
right,
not.
Okay, because
right.
Can we focus on one amendment at a time, and then?
The only amendment on the floor is to add a grant writer, a full-time grant writer position to the proposed budget.
Right. I just want to be clear because we also started talking about the instructional specialist.
I apologize. That was my fault. I'm sorry.
Which I support. I just want to be sure that we're.
The point I was trying to make, and I'm sorry, Ms. Basine, was that I didn't want a grants writer if we could not get additional trained, certified STEM people at STEM Academy. That was what if we were choosing between the two. But I apologize for getting us off track.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Any other comments? Okay. I'll just say that the discussion for a grant writer has been a long time discussion. And Dr. Birdsong, as long as you feel that this is something that you could manage within your existing budget as a support mechanism for our building staff, I will support it. I would like to see a job description that goes along with the grants writer position so I can have a better understanding as to what their duties and expectations will be if we are going to be approving something like this. So I'd like to go ahead and take a roll call on the amendment to the budget for addition of a full-time grants writer position.
C.
Aye.
Campson.
Based on what Dr. Birdsong has promised, yes.
Clanton.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Jordan.
Aye.
Gabriel.
Aye. Okay. All right. That's the first one. What is the second one?
So I was using the printed document that we received earlier that had the February 19th proposal from Dr. Birdsong. And on page 164 was where the additional security officer positions were being recommended. And so I would like to move that we add 2 additional security officer positions, one for Norview High School and one for Granby High School.
Yes. I second that motion.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna, it's been Ms. Basine. Okay, Ms. Campson.
Whatever security we need, I'm certainly supportive of. I just want to be sure that we are distinguishing between the security coordinator type position in the elementary schools and the security officers that are in our secondary schools. So it would be a different job description, which would follow, I assume, the job description that's already there for secondary and the new job description that we are writing for the elementary coordinators, which is already in your proposed budget, that we make sure that we are clarifying the difference between the roles of a security officer in a secondary school and a security coordinator in an elementary school.
Okay.
If it's helpful, and I know Mr. Clanton can help me with this. If it's helpful,
Still having. I'm sorry, Mr. Jordan.
If it's helpful, I will. If it's helpful, I will say 2 security resource officers. One.
I don't like that. I like coordinators.
No,
we can discuss that later. I just don't want, because I want to be sure that people understand there's a difference in this kind of security you put in an elementary school and what you would put in a high school.
Yes, and so to your point, Ms. Campson, because I'm recommending positions at the high school level, I was trying to respect your view and to say that there would be an additional security resource officer for Norview and an additional security resource officer for Granby High School.
Thank you. Thank you for your clarification.
I need clarification, please, because we have school resource officers and then we have school security officers currently. So is this a new position, new job description?
Are you talking to me?
No. Let me tell you what my intent is. My intent is to provide additional security support to the 2 high schools that have the largest enrollment that tends to be offset by other high schools. So I was just trying to say security officer and was leaving it up to the administration to make that determination.
Okay.
Then I was trying to provide some distinction in response to Ms. Campson, but if it's appropriate to say security officers for the secondary level, then I'm fine with that as well, if that gives you the flexibility that you
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Birdsong.
And I'd like to add to that, I would like an opportunity to review what we have at this time, because what happens, Mr. Jordan, typically there should be a review conducted at the end of each academic year going forward into the next year. And it could be that two other secondary schools may not be in need of the number of security officers that they have at this time. And then we can transfer the existing allocations to those two schools. But
Yes.
I have to be honest, we haven't done that review today. In March, we have not done that review. So I would be hesitant to say we need those two additional positions.
Yes, ma'am. What I was basing it from earlier in our discussion with education.
Mr. Jordan, your connectivity is difficult.
Each high school had the same.
Mr. Jordan, you're not coming across fluid.
He's freezing.
He needs to
Having
reset.
technical difficulty.
Maybe we need to send him a text so he knows what's happening.
I think Mrs. Basine did.
Did.
Sorry.
I sent him a message on the chat.
While he's getting back on, are there any other points of discussion with regards to this, Ms. Smith?
You're on mute. Christine, you're on mute.
You're on mute. Ms. Smith,
You gotta
unmute yourself.
unmute. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm off mute.
Okay.
So do I need to make an amendment to add the additional instructional specialist to the STEM Academy?
Hold on, Ms. Smith. I appreciate your comment, but let's just keep all the discussion matters related to the amendment to the motion that Mr. Jordan has brought up regarding the two additional security guards.
Is
Okay.
is Carlos still on? I've lost his photo.
Yeah, he must have stopped the video or
Let me
muted.
It's their connections that pop them off, so they're gonna have to pop back on.
Oh, so we just wait for them to come back. Okay.
Yeah, let me text him and let him know he's popping. He probably already knows that.
Okay.
Waiting to come back in, Jordan. Okay, Rodney's back in.
Okay.
Now we're still missing Carlos.
Yeah.
Karen, this is your cue to do the background music, okay?
Sing us a good song.
I've reached out to Mr. Clanton, but we have Rodney back if you want to finish this.
Okay, should we be discussing without Carlos?
No, we're gonna wait. We're gonna hold on a second.
The wheels on the bus go round.
How appropriate.
Let me see if I can't call him.
So I'll be right back while we're waiting for Mr. Clanton.
Oops, we lost another one.
She's coming back.
Were you able to contact him, Karen?
He didn't respond. But look at his video and his it's off. Let me see, disconnected. He's still listening. Can you check that?
back.
We just need Christine.
Okay. All right. Are we good, Carlos? All right. And there's
Yep.
Christine. Okay. So is there any further discussion on the amendment with the security guards at Norview High School and Granby High School?
I did have one question before we move into that one. Why Norview and Granby?
Oh,
I may have missed it.
I'm sorry. I think I got cut off when I was explaining my rationale. I think we had received an allocation chart that showed that there were currently equal amounts at each high school. I think the number was 4. But from comments that we've had from the public and from at least in visits that I've had and conversations with parents and others at those 2 schools, because the enrollments there are so high and the way the design of the school is, that an additional one for Norview and an additional security for Granby High School was the basis for my recommendation.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Jordan.
Okay. Okay. Any further discussion? Ms. Kingston.
Just a quick clarification from Dr. Birdsong. So Dr. Birdsong, is your recommendation that we go ahead and add them now, or that we wait and see if you are going to be reallocating the way your staff goes? Because I'm certainly in favor of more support at these 2 high schools, but where are you on this?
Well, again, typically a review would be conducted at the end of the year along with discipline data. But I do agree, just, face value, every school, I don't know why we would have the same number at every school. And so I would like to further review that. And again, the existing allocation may be able to support that. It could just be transferring an allocation from one school to the next.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Miss Martin, are you raising your hand for a comment? No. Okay. All right. Ms. Tanner, if you could please call the roll on this amendment.
Yes. Basine?
Aye.
Campson?
Still a little bit confused, but aye.
Blanton?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye.
Jordan?
Aye.
Gabriel?
Nay. Okay. The third amendment.
In the capital improvement budget, we have appreciate Dr. Birdsong's recommendation around the significant requests for maintenance. I would like to move that we also include in our capital improvement requests $4 million to support design and construction for Booker T. Washington High School to align with the Booker T. Washington educational and facility planning study that we'll have underway.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a second?
Aye.
Second.
I second. Sorry.
Ms. Basine seconds.
Yeah, I was on mute.
Okay. Is there further discussion on this item? Ms. Martin.
So, just so I understand, so you'd like to put $4 million before we have the results of the feasibility study?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Mr. Clanton.
All right. So, Madam Chair, I hearing this first time hearing anything around $4 million. Mr. Jordan and myself both sit on the facilities committee and then understand the stresses and challenges around all of our school buildings, particularly Booker T. Booker T hasn't had feasibility study or anything done with it since 1974. However, back to my original statement regarding the uncertainty, even in the next 60 days regarding budgets, and also looking at that we do have a feasibility study that this board voted on to include in the budget, which is included in the budget currently now. to ask for dollars to be associated with the building when we don't know what the program and what will be needed, it's to me kind of putting the cart before the horse, particularly in these stressed economic times that we're in. So with that, Madam Chair, I move to postpone this discussion until May, after we receive budget returned back from the City Council.
So may I speak to that?
Hold on one second,
Right.
Mr. Jordan. I need to ask a clarifying question to Mr. Clanton. So we have an amendment on the floor. There's a second, and then you are moving to postpone the discussion until May. Do I have to have a second for
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second for the item that has been brought up by Mr. Clanton to postpone this discussion until May? I see your hand up, Miss Campson, but I just have to make sure that we're following procedural orders. I see your hand. Is there a second to the motion that Mr. Clanton has brought up in order to postpone the Booker T. Washington item?
I'll second that.
Okay, Ms. Martin. Okay, this has been moved and seconded. So, Mr. Clanton, can I proceed with Ms. Campson's? She had her hand up for discussion.
Yeah, so in other words, we're doing discussion regarding my motion to postpone.
So,
Okay.
so
Okay. So then we take this item up for discussion and then we vote on this motion and then we come back to Mr. Jordan's.
The
Okay.
amendment. Correct.
Okay. All right. So is there discussion on the floor regarding Mr. Clanton's motion to postpone this discussion until May, until further discussion has been had regarding the feasibility study? Did I state that correctly, Mr.
No,
Clanton?
I'm asking for the postponement to May once we've received the budget back from City Council.
That's right.
Okay.
So Dr. Gabriel, as the maker of the original amendment that is now being recommended for postponement, may I comment to what Mr. Clanton has raised?
Yes, but hold on one second, because Ms. Campson did have her hand up and I want to make sure that I get to her. Ms. Campson, is your comment in response to the motion that was made by Mr. Clanton or the motion that was made by Mr. Jordan?
Kind of both, but I guess right now directly to Mr. Clanton's motion.
Okay, then I'm going to let you speak and then I'm going to let Mr. Jordan speak. Go ahead.
Well, I have a concern about the $4 million being dropped at the last minute when we're doing the vote, an amendment to add another $4 million to what is the balanced budget. Do have a concern with that. Certainly, we all want to see something done at Booker T, but I thought like Mr. Clanton did, I thought we were waiting for the feasibility study, which is a logical sequence rather than just jumping in and putting this down until we have that. So I think this is something we need to do. We have a few schools we need to do it for, but we need to get the feasibility study done first. So that would be why I would support postponing rather than just saying no.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Campson. Mr. Jordan?
Yeah, so just for clarity on a couple of points. So on when we were preparing for our work session on March 4th, I sent a memo to the board and Dr. Birdsong recommending this at the time. So this is the idea behind the funds for Booker T. Washington is not new. I have raised this previously. Mm-hmm. What the intent is so on the operating budget, it is correct that we are putting forward, our goal is to put forward a balanced budget for the operating budget. My understanding of the capital improvement budget is that we are submitting requests that includes maintenance based upon the work that we've done with cooperative strategies and the facilities conditions index. And that we have I believe the bus replacements may be in that as well. What I'm suggesting is that as part of new school construction, that we're simply asking the city council to begin to set funds aside to support design and construction of a new Booker T. Washington High School. So all I'm recommending is that if the council were to approve this, then they would begin to set funds aside to support design and construction of that school. The results of the facilities would, of the educational specifications would still take place. But what my amendment in motion is intended to do is to already have funds set aside so that once the educational specification process is done, we don't find ourselves waiting another budget cycle or another 2 budget cycles trying to then get funds set aside to be able to act upon what the recommendations are. So all this is intended to do, it doesn't have any impact on balancing the budget at all. All this is asking that the school board requests that the city council begin setting funds aside. So when the recommendations come back from the study activity, that we would have money available to then move down the path of implementing the recommendations that come back.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
All right, Mr. Clinton, and then Ms. Campson.
Yeah, I'd like to remind my colleagues, if you go back with me here, maybe a couple months, when we had this heated discussion about a casino in Norfolk, City Council had pretty much made a decision and announced it, that the sale of the land for $10 million would be split equally, $5 million for Booker T. Washington High School and $5 million for Maury High School. And that's in spite of the long list of facility issues that we have and things that we needed to take care of for capital improvement with other schools. Even in our current capital improvement budget, with almost being $17 million, all of our schools are left off. There is a designated amount that council has already spoken and said $5 million is going to Booker T. Washington High School. And so I think the funds have already been identified, but I don't think and believe at this particular point they need to be identified further in this budget when we have $200,000 for the feasibility study. I have a difference of opinion. I don't believe that we put the cart before the horse, in the respect that we need to ensure that we have the academic program and understanding what that will look like for the future of Booker T. Washington High School. I can't see going to council and saying that we need additional funds for Booker T. Washington High School when we have not clearly identified how we're going to spend those funds to ensure that Booker T. Washington High School is going to go further and it's going to be a great draw in this new academic program. So my 2 arguments there is that there have been funds that have already been identified from council for Booker T. Washington High School that could be, that are just coming over for facility, which could be placed towards that new school or be set aside for that, in addition to some of the improvements that need to take place there. I'm asking for postponement because I believe that we need to see what the budget looks like in our current our current economic times, and to see what council sends back to us. I believe that you asked for what you want to ask for, but there's a laundry list of other schools, Sherwood Forest being one of them, that are also represented in Ward 3 and Super Ward 7, that I can't see asking for additional dollars and when we can't meet all the other needs of these schools.
All right. What I'd like to do is, Ms. Campson, you did have your hand up, and then I'd like to go ahead and call the roll then.
I just wanted to ask Dr. Birdsong how this would, all right, we're voting on the postponement or on doing it?
Okay, we're voting on the postponement
Oh, okay.
of the discussion until May.
Okay, I'd still like to just ask just a real brief response, Dr. Birdsong. How does this impact the budget? Because I know what Mr. Jordan was saying, but if we're adding it to this budget, then it does impact this budget.
Well, I think what Mr. Jordan was trying to say, it's not going to impact the operating budget, but it will impact the request for CIP.
Right, and which schools can get their new roofs.
Jordan, but I'm thinking you are asking, instead of us asking for 17 million, it would be 17 plus 4.
Right. So the 17 million, as I understand it, includes funds for maintenance and I think bus replacement. What I'm asking for,
1 million for bus replacement.
Right. That 4 million would go into a school construction fund.
So it would be over and above the budget. So we're asking for so what you're asking for is an increase of $4 million in the proposed budget that we're sending to the city.
For capital improvement.
CIP, yeah.
Yeah, but an increase of that budget.
Yes,
Not less, because we have schools that are floating away that need new roofs.
That is correct.
Yeah, that's what he's asking for. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Tanner, so let's just restate what we are getting ready to take a vote on. We are taking a vote on the motions put on the floor by Mr. Clinton, seconded by Ms. Martin, to postpone the discussion of any additional funds dedicated to Booker T. Washington High School construction until at least May, until further information has been received from the City Council regarding their budget. Mr. Clinton, I just want to make sure that I have stated this correctly.
Correct.
Okay, Ms. Tanner, please call for the vote.
Basine?
Nay.
Campson?
Yes.
Clanton?
Aye.
Smith?
No.
Martin?
Aye.
Gabriel? Yes, Gabriel.
No, I think you need to get Mr. Jordan.
Mr. Jordan, I was going to come back to him. That's the way I had listed. Jordan?
Nay.
Gabriel?
Aye. Okay, so this motion now passes for delayed discussion of the Booker T. Washington item added. Let me go over again. What we're doing right now is we are postponing the discussion until at least May with regard to any funding for capital improvement for Booker T. Washington High School. However, that does not impact any items that are already in the proposed budget regarding CIP or maintenance that Dr. Birdsong has in her proposed budget. It is merely postponing the discussion. Okay. So procedurally, let me step back for a second. And Mr. Clinton, now that we have voted and it has passed, as far as the amendment put on the floor by Mr. Jordan, do we now have to take a vote on his amendment?
No, Mr. Jordan's amendment now is null and void. This superseded that. So we would now be at Mr. Jordan's fourth amendment.
That is correct. Okay, Mr. Jordan, your fourth amendment.
Yeah, so my fourth amendment ties to what we just discussed and have been discussing. I know let me just put the amendment out there. I like to make the motion that we include the position of a Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer in the budget. On page 203 of the February 19th proposal, I recognize that we formerly had a chief position that I know Dr. Birdsong, rightfully in her restructuring of the organization, is phasing out a division chief. But what I'm recommending is that we retain that staffing allocation, and devote it to a Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer who could provide support for the board's priorities, Dr. Birdsong's focus on equity, and to help us as a school division to give support to our equity policy and other assessments, innovation, recommendations to help us with our goals around diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Mm-hmm. Is there a second for the motion?
Second.
Ms. Smith seconds. Okay. Before I turn the floor over for any discussion, Dr. Birdsong, I'd like to start with you first. I'm not sure if this has been discussed before between the two of you.
No, it hasn't, but it has been discussed with members of the team. I do see it as a valued position. I'm not certain that I would have it as a chief level position, but I do think it would be of value, especially since we adopted a equity policy. I believe it was probably 4 or 5 years ago, and we've not been able to address a lot of the issues that have resulted because of that policy. So I certainly would not be in opposition of that position, but I would want to evaluate at what level that position would be in terms of a chief level, deputy level, senior director. I'd want to give that some more thought, but certainly they could be of value within the administration. And again, in looking at that, as I conduct a review of central office positions, again, it would not be positions that impact the school building. I would like an opportunity to further review that. I see the value in that position.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dr. Birdsong. Ms. Smith?
Just want to add that such a position as this will definitely add value to our district as a whole, and I wholeheartedly support this.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Campson?
I too think we need the position. I mean, however, I also, the first thought that crossed my mind is, why does it have to be a chief? The problem that we've had in central office is we keep creating these chief, deputy, whatever positions at very high salaries, and a person doesn't need to, we don't need to keep jumping up and keep pushing up these positions that cost so much money. I'm not quite sure why you would need a chief position. We traditionally have operations and we have academics because they're so all-encompassing. This position would be kind of across all those, but it doesn't need to be at a chief's level. But maybe a direct report to the superintendent level.
Ms. Basine?
Yeah, I too support this position, and I would argue otherwise, because I do think that equity needs to be central to every aspect of the work that we do as a division, and so I wholeheartedly also support this position. And it was raised. It was raised when we began our budget priority discussions in November. It's been out there as something that I think the board or board members have desired to see in this budget.
Okay, Mr. Clanton?
So I go back to the point because I was sitting here thinking, Dr. Birdsong, but you raised it, because we've had an equity policy for this district for almost 5 years. And so the question that I have is, why now? Why not 4 or 5 years ago to have this position? And I totally wholeheartedly support, and Mr. Jordan, you and I we're pretty much on the same thinking phrase when it comes to this position and the need in the district. But it kind of goes back to one of these things again, back to the I don't know, chief level, and I agree with Ms. Campson in the respect of we have been very focused on reducing these unnecessary, I guess, in some respect of higher paid salary positions and making sure that more funds are back in the schoolhouse. But I believe that this does send a strong message that we're going to be serious about this. And I think that we've had, as a board, a discussion in another venue to talk about why we would need this and how this could help. I think we should leave it up to the superintendent to identify where that would be in their wheelhouse. I believe that that's the most appropriate manner. And so my question then goes back, do we necessarily need to amend the budget, or is this really just a priority that we direct the superintendent to identify with what's already been established within the budget as she's going through and reevaluating certain positions?
Right, and let me jump in here for a second. So the board's role is to govern. Our role is to allow the superintendent to make these assessments and to share her expertise with how she believes administrative staff should be allocated, duties, etc. I think that while I would support the essence of a position with this type of focus on equity and inclusion and diversity. However, I don't feel that it is appropriate for the board to tell the superintendent that this is a chief's level position. Our role as the board is to say we value equity. We want to see a budget that reflects items that will support equity in the division, that will support inclusion. And then we hold the superintendent accountable to that. I don't think that this amendment is appropriate for a board to be making, and so I could not support it. So let me get to the questions that are brought up. Mr. Jordan, Ms. Basine, Ms. Campson.
No, I can wait. I was just going to respond to questions I thought were directed at me, but I can wait for others if they have questions also.
Well, I'll say mine wasn't a question. I was just going to respond to some of the comments that were just made as to why now. And but I don't know if Mr. Jordan, as the maker of the motion, wanted to respond to that. I'll defer to you, but I'll add in later if I have anything to add.
Yeah, so thank you. So number one, I agree with Dr. Gabriel in terms of the role of the board in governing. I debated with myself about whether to push this at this time in terms of the
Thank
budget.
you.
What my intent was, so a couple of things. One, the question in terms of why now. This is not the first time that I've advocated for such a position. Really what struck me in terms of bringing this for the board for consideration during this closure, as we've been dealing with the coronavirus, what I believe I have witnessed both in terms of access to computers, the differences that we have in terms of curriculum offerings at our schools. At the last work session we had, at least the work session we had at Granby, you may recall the position came up about the advanced placement course that was being placed at one school, and we kind of had some discussion around whether or not we were offering advanced placement opportunities at all of our schools. So I think Mrs. Campson's suggestion that the position be a direct report to the superintendent was really what I had in mind. I have no problem whatsoever in terms of Dr. Birdsong determining what the official title is, whether it's chief executive director or senior director, whatever it may be. The real intent for me was to make sure that we included in this budget funding to support this diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. If at such time we come back later and find that that position is filled through existing funds, or whether or not it is supported through the proposal that goes over to the city council. I thought this was the appropriate time to try to make sure that the position was funded in our proposal.
Okay, Ms. Campson.
Oh, well, Mr. Jordan, thank you very much. That was the point I wanted to make. We've asked for other positions, but we haven't labeled what level they would be. And the superintendent, I know, will be doing a lot of reorganization, just like any other new superintendent does. So as long as I know that she has the authority to go ahead and organize it the way she wants, certainly I'm in full support of an equity officer. Thank you.
And if I may, just one final comment on that.
Thank you for remembering your mic this time.
Yes, I'm working on it. In the different sessions that I've been in where we've had chief equity officers or innovation officers appear, and in some of the research that's come out of Ed Week and Ed Trust and other organizations, the reason why it's been recommended that this type of position be at the administration level or direct report to the superintendent level is so that we can ensure that the importance and significance of the work funnels throughout the entire organization. What's been said is if it gets relegated down to a position that's not deemed having authority, then it doesn't carry the full weight and merit that it needs in order for decisions to be made. So that was also part of my rationale.
Okay, thanks.
So,
Mr. Clanton?
Madam Chair, I agree. I've read a lot of the same studies that Mr. Jordan is mentioning regarding the level. However, I still believe, based on our governance structure, it's inappropriate for us to direct and tell the superintendent what level it would be. And I think that's something that we can do in discussion. So I just like to have Mr. Jordan to restate what his motion is, if he's making any changes to what he's originally had, or if he's maintaining the same before I vote.
Okay. I would like to clarify and amend that we include in our proposal the position of diversity, equity, and inclusion officer.
I second that motion.
Oh, no, we already.
Oh, I didn't know if we were restating it. Okay. There was a long pause. So.
Yeah, no, I'm taking notes. Dr. Birdsong, I just have to come back to you again, because while I support the spirit of what Mr. Jordan is conveying. I am still concerned about how this goes below the line with regards to positions within your purview, and I just need to understand from you, is this something that I know you said you've talked about it in your executive leadership team, if I heard you correctly earlier. Is this something that you're prepared to do, or is this something that you need to have further thought on and then come back to the board based on our goals, our priorities, our accountability plan?
I'm certainly prepared to move forward with this position. Again, I'm not prepared to discuss at what level that position will be.
Okay.
The essence of the role of the person I wholeheartedly support.
Okay. All right. Then let's go ahead and call for a roll call on this amendment for the position of equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Okay. Basine?
Aye.
Campson?
Aye.
Clanton?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye.
Jordan?
Aye.
Gabriel?
Aye. Excellent. All right. So those were the 4 amendments. And now I have Ms. Smith.
One amendment, I'd like to make an amendment to add the instructional specialist, an additional instructional specialist to the STEM Academy.
Second.
Okay, I'm sorry. Who made the second?
Campson?
Campson.
Campson.
Okay. Second, Ms. Campson. Okay, so the motion on the floor is to add an additional instructional
Specialist.
Do you want it to be the STEM certified specialist, Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Okay, STEM certified specialist. Okay, to Southside STEM Academy, and that has been seconded by Ms. Campson. Before we get into
Well, no, because did we identify the first one that way? We know, I trust that Dr. Birdsong is going to hire the appropriate people to put in that position, that we don't have to specify it to that extent, because in the first one, we did not do that.
Thank you.
Okay, so the proposed budget that Dr. Birdsong has put forth is to add a Dr. Birdsong.
It was an instructional specialist with a focus on STEM at the Southside STEM Academy.
Okay.
So the
Yes.
exact same.
So it will be a person certified in the STEM area.
Okay. So
Okay.
Ms.
Otherwise, it wouldn't work.
So going back to your motion, adding that second instructional specialist.
Right.
Okay. All right.
The exact same as the first one.
Thank you.
Right.
Is what I meant.
I understand. Dr. Birdsong, first of all, let me just give you an opportunity to comment. I know we kind of delved into this conversation a little earlier, but now we're dedicated to this amendment.
Again, I support this position 100%. Again, this is something that my team and I had already discussed. And so having someone focused at the elementary level, a staff member, and then another staff member that could dedicate their time and commitment to secondary would be ideal. So I certainly would support having another full-time staff member to serve in that capacity.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right. Well, I think that this is a worthwhile item to definitely consider, as we want the STEM program at the Southside STEM Academy to be stellar and to be on target for being exceptional. So let me go ahead and call the roll then. Ms. Tanner.
Basine?
Aye.
Campson?
Aye.
Clanton?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye. Oh, aye.
She's really excited. Martin.
Aye.
Jordan?
Aye.
Gabriel?
Aye. Motion passes.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Clanton.
based on your original statement regarding timing, 3 minutes per board member and 2 minutes
Yes.
rebuttal, I think that we have exhausted our time of debate and discussion, and I'd like to call the question.
Thank you very much. I agree. I think everybody has had ample opportunity for further discussion. So what we have right now on the floor is a budget with the superintendent's proposed budget. There is an appropriate second. We have 3 amendments that have passed. The first amendment includes a full-time grant writer. The second amendment is for additional staff security for Norview and Granby High School. And the third amendment is for an instructional specialist for the Southside STEM Academy. The fourth amendment did not pass because it has been postponed for further discussion.
Yeah, but we did the chief diversity, didn't we?
Yeah.
But that's not an amendment. My correction. That's not an amendment to the budget. It's more of a directive.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Right. You're right.
No,
We did an
No,
amendment.
you're right.
no, we did do an amendment. We did do an
We
amendment.
did. Yes. No, I was my note. We actually do have the fourth amendment because then we have the one by Ms. Smith. So we have 4 amendments that have been approved to the budget. Ms. Tanner, if you could please call the roll.
Basine?
Nay.
Hampson?
Aye.
Clanton? Smith?
I don't understand what we're doing.
I know.
We are,
I got a little confused in all that was just said.
let me restate what we're doing right now. We have a motion on the floor. This is the original motion, the proposed superintendent's budget. There was a second. Within the discussion, we had 4 amendments that passed and that will be attached to the original motion. The amendments are stated before: the grant writer, the inclusion, equity, and diversity specialist, the security guards for Norview and Granby, and the instruction specialist for the Southside STEM Academy. What we are voting on right now is the motion amended to that. What we are voting on now is the motion with the 4 amendments. That is what we are voting on right now. And it was
the motion as amended.
The motion as amended. And it was through the discussion, the lengthy discussion, almost an hour and a half that we've had, that we came to these amendments. So that is what you are casting your vote for.
Right. And
Okay.
Dr. Gabriel, can I interject a comment here real quick? So when we started off this discussion, I mean, it was just suddenly decided that we were cutting off discussion regarding amendments. I started off the discussion with some commentary around possibly reducing the number of elementary school resource officers in support of, and I cited the lengthy email questions on March 3rd and March 10th, which includes a lot of different items that I would like to be considered. I didn't put it in an amendment form, but I certainly think that, there are questions around, especially board certified behavioral specialists. The current budget allows for 5, that says that we will get 5. I would like to know if they're board certified, and if they're not, I would like to recommend that we include that at least 2 of them be board certified behavioral analysts to support our special education students. I'm not following why there's this arbitrary moment where we're cutting off the ability to make an amendment.
Madam Chair, if I may, because I'm the one that stated it, the chair has the ability to decide on discussion. And in the very beginning, she outlined 3 minutes for each board member with 2 minutes of rebuttal. We had clearly exhausted beyond that. And when you made your initial comments, there was nothing to preclude you, Ms. Basine, from making amendments at that time. We are now in the middle of a vote. And so I would raise and say point of order, that the things that you're bringing up now are not in order, but I do say that they have relevance. And I would, as a board member myself personally, like to take them under consideration when we come back in May with the revised budget. But at this particular point, they're not in order.
Okay. All right. Ms. Tanner, we were at Ms. Smith for the vote.
Yes. Ms. Smith?
I don't agree with what we're doing right now. But I do, this is just crazy. But I do support the amendments that have been agreed upon in this budget. While it stated that the amendments or concerns that Mr. Singh has could have been addressed, she wasn't given the opportunity to address them. So it's like we can't do some things and not do others. We didn't stick to the time frame at all, but it seems like when we want to cut it off, then we want to stick to the time frame. I'm going to go ahead and vote yes, though, for this budget.
Martin?
Aye.
Jordan?
Aye.
Gabriel?
Aye. The budget passes with the amendments. Okay. Give me just a second here. Okay. All right. Well, I will have to say that I thought that our discussion was very good. And for those who put forth their statements directed as amendments, I believe that we discussed them. We had good discussion about that, and we came to a conclusion through appropriate procedure. What I would like to say is that with regarding to the budget, I know that we started the process early in November and that we've had several meetings that have come across to that. And I know that we are probably going to be experiencing some changes as it comes back to us from the city. And I'm prepared to be very flexible as it pertains to what the city is going to be able to contribute to the budget in order for us to fulfill all of the items that we want to for our students. What I would like to say to everybody is that we are meeting electronically. Our folks within agenda planning, Dr. Birdsong, Mr. Clanton, Ms. Tanner, Mr. Cloud, to try to reorganize our schedule with regards to board meetings. I know that we have allocated the first and third Wednesdays for board meetings. However, in light of all that is happening with regards to students having to do education from home, I want to work with Dr. Birdsong so that she can maximize her ability to provide the support that she needs to the building level providers. And so the board essentially would only need to meet if we are to be doing actionable items or if there is extreme discussion that needs to take place for advisement of the superintendent. She is communicating to us through emails, through telephone calls, and I certainly appreciate that. So at this point in time, we have voted on the two items on our resolution, on our agenda, the resolution for the pandemic emergency and the superintendent's proposed budget. We will be sending the budget over to City Council with the 4 amendments. And that officially adjourns our meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.